people have struggled to extend the playtime of their games since the dawn of civilization. I mean, in my head, there were probably a group of cavemen who I'm sure played around with different ways of getting more fun out of banging rocks together, and after thousands to millions of years of experimentation? How old are cavemen? I don't really know. Humanity has worked out there's a ton of different ways of doing this. Most of them are terrible, though. Unfortunately, that has not stopped people from doing them and continuing to do them to this day. How much are you willing to sacrifice for more game? Backtracking is actually a completely neutral term to describe a moment in a game where you have to go back to a previous area to find some more content. It's neutral in the same way that terms like DLC and QuickTime events are neutral. You know, they're not always bad, but they usually are. Which is another way of saying that backtracking isn't always a bad thing, and yeah, I guess that is the case if you're willing to display otherwise unheard levels of optimism. I don't necessarily hate the idea of revisiting areas, but it doesn't exactly strike me as the preferred option when the alternative is actually new stuff. Game development is a complicated process that requires a lot of time and money, with backtracking often acting as a way of saving both of those, but there really haven't been too many cases in the past where I've enjoyed retreading a part of a game that I've already done. At least when it's not optional, I can sort of get behind putting voluntary objectives in previously explored locations. Honestly, I wish this happened more often than a game actively necessitating that you turn around. Anything that doesn't give me the worst kind of deja vu.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
One defense in favor of backtracking would be tapping into the same satisfaction from a game with good replay value. You only really get to a state of feeling inclined to replay a whole game again when the game in question is set up to take advantage of this fact and offer a new way of experiencing the same setting. So, if you are backtracking to an earlier section, it does help if your character has new abilities or weapons to make progress more streamlined. Or maybe the area has undergone major changes since the last time you visited. Halfway through Devil May Cry 4, a game where you play a large chunk of it as Nero, or his more commonly accepted name, not Dante, you're given the opportunity to finally play as the character you've been desperate to play as this whole time. Except things are weird and repetitive, and I'm slightly aggravated by it. Really, when you're sitting down to play a Devil May Cry game and have to compromise by controlling Nero for 11 chapters of the adventure, you would likely welcome the chance to play as Dante with open arms. It's almost a pun because, you know, Nero, he's got a robot arm, his open arm. I think it's funny. Unfortunately, the switch over to Dante is somewhat tainted because Dante's levels are simply Nero's levels, but they're ever so slightly different this time around. Trust me, I think they're reversed or something, either in order or layout, I don't know. I haven't played this game for a while. The upshot is that you're fighting your way through levels you've already beaten, but this time as a newish character who does feel different to Nero, but not different enough to justify putting minimal effort into the level design. It all depends on how much you are pining for playing as Dante, which is clearly the main selling point here, but even with Dante having as much fun as he's having in this game, it is a tall order to ignore this scale of backtracking. Though, there's not many games out there that let you play as Dante, and that will always be a bonus. This whole play the game again but with a new character is very commonplace with many different types of video games, but usually this comes about upon completion of a game, not halfway through it. And I remember how Resident Evil 2 did this, a Capcom property like Devil May Cry, and I just wonder if they couldn't have made Devil May Cry 4 in this way. Though, who would want to play a whole game as Nero? RPGs are stupid. Has anyone else noticed this yet? I mean, they're not really, because I mostly said that to see if anyone would react to it since I'm a content creator in 2019 and it's hard to get anyone to pay attention to me without kicking up a storm and manufacturing some drama. But I don't want to sound like I'm backtracking because RPGs are a little unconventional. This is usually why loads of people love them though, since you can start one up in the knowledge that you're committing to dozens of hours of playtime and intricate narratives in order to reach some kind of endpoint. RPGs are a bit weird, but they're reliably weird, in a way that frequently uses backtracking so you can obtain a gradual appreciation of the world you're inhabiting. This is the justification that I'm assuming was part of the reason why Chapter 7 of Paper Mario The 1000-Year Door forced you to become reacquainted with every previous area in the game. Because how are you going to love it if you don't go back for stupid reasons? I also haven't played this game for a while, and so my memories of it are based on particularly vivid instances of the 1000-Year Door either being awesome or infuriatingly inconsistent, and they don't come more frustrating than the whole General White detour. I say detour, but this is part of the main quest and has no workarounds, and so if you want to continue playing this game and progressing through to some of the more exciting parts of Chapter 7 and beyond, you need to find General White. You need to have a chat with this white Bob-omb so you can activate a cannon that will shoot you to the moon, except by the time you need to do this, he's not around. He's off doing whatever Bob-ombs do in this game, I don't know, fucking exploding on people. That'll do. What follows is this convoluted wild goose chase where you get a tip from someone that apparently General White was seen in this location. You then travel to that location only to be told that he's not here and might in fact be in a different area of the world. This happens a grand total of 6 times, at which point you've retread every location in the game, forcing you to return to where you started with bad news, but he was here the whole time. Oh, that's just beautiful. I really appreciate this thing you've done for me today, I think. It's a really out-of-character moment for 1000-Year Door that usually paces its events and story beats out very competently, but everything is oddly slow here, at a time when you'd think they'd be ramping up the excitement before the most important area in the fucking game. How have you made shooting off to the moon in a cannon something that I'm just grateful to see at this point? You can do better than this, surely. An upside of playing truly linear games is that backtracking is often impossible. Naturally, it's very hard to go back to a previous point in the game so that you can do a thing that will let you make progress if you physically can't get back there. Games that are split up into chapters avoid this issue very nicely, if at the cost of exploration and a sense that this game is interconnected on a surface level. Metal Gear has incidentally used every part of the linearity spectrum, with the Phantom Pain having a huge traditionally open world to explore, while the original Metal Gear Solid is considerably more railroaded in execution. Kinda makes it hard to have backtracking if it's quite tricky to go back. Oh man, they found a way though. One of Metal Gear Solid's best boss fights that isn't called Psycho Mantis is the emotionally charged snowfield sniper duel with Sniper Wolf. It tests your endurance and patience and your ability to shoot at someone's very small head from very far away. So it's very, very important. It's a very iconic moment in this franchise and the perfect opportunity to use the sniper rifle. That is, if you can find it. Shock horror, it turns out that Metal Gear Solid is surprisingly non-linear at points, and nowhere is this more annoying than the hunt for the elusive sniper rifle that is a prerequisite if you want to get past Sniper Wolf. Unlike every other case of crappy backtracking on this video, this example has some story significance, since Meryl gets shot by Sniper Wolf and you have to leave her as she is so you can wander around the place looking for the right type of gun. Some kind of long hunting rifles type thing, I don't know. You have to walk back through a lot of shit and twitchy enemy guards so you can find this very important sniper rifle, and the journey to get back there is just long enough for you to feel your life essence slowly ebb away from you. They haven't made this route harder per se, but I always found that I would rush through this section so I could get back to something more interesting, only to be tripped up by guards and dogs and I guess my own hubris. The clinching factor here is that the duel you end up having with Sniper Wolf is merely part 1, since Snake is captured immediately after defeating her and chucked into that torture segment everybody loves. You're putting all this effort in and it's not even the sniper duel that everyone knows and remembers from Metal Gear Solid. Yeah, I think that deserves a good cry. The sensible argument in favour of backtracking, which I'm surprised has only just come up, is the Metroidvania subgenre of video games. One of the defining characteristics, maybe even the entire purpose of Metroidvania games, is to have a very large open plan layout to your world so that backtracking is frequent and practically expected. If you're going into Metroidvania games complaining about backtracking, like, What are you even doing, man? The primary issue of Metroidvania is translating it into 3D. In a two-dimensional setting, everything is mapped out very clearly, and you'll rarely have any issues knowing where you need to be at any one point in a playthrough. I think it says a lot when you consider how relatively sparse the 3D Metroidvania genre is, with only really Batman Arkham Asylum, Dark Souls, and the Metroid Prime games keeping this type of backtracking alive. All of these are great games, but even they suffer from some fairly devastating instances of irritating backtracking. Perhaps it's only fitting that the most egregious example comes from a trilogy of games that prove that Metroidvania could successfully transition over to a 3D environment. Just so long as you're not doing anything too stupid. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes is probably my least favourite of the trilogy, mainly because it tries a few too many fancy tricks to innovate itself, but it's still a very good game that is well deserving of its place in this excellent trilogy. But also, I'm sometimes reminded of collecting the keys to the Sky Temple and all rationale flies out of the window in favour of some kind of exploit that'll get me to a more entertaining portion of the video game. It's very simple to explain actually. The final area in the game is blocked off by a lock that needs 9 more keys to open it, which already sounds like a tall order, but what I haven't mentioned yet is how scattered they are throughout a number of the areas that you've already been to. It is very annoying having to retrace your steps to go hunting for 9 of these orb keys that are hidden around corners and sometimes are replaced with reminders that if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, then feel free to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications of every new upload. This is the darker side of Metroidvania backtracking where, yes, a large connected world does allow you to hide important items in areas you've already finished, but that doesn't mean that you should be doing this. Exercise some goddamn restraint and don't feel the need to slow the game down at an important moment like Paper Mario did. These games came out in the same year, so clearly there was something fucky in the water at Nintendo HQ around that time. Every game must waste your time, that's just what we're doing now. If Metroid games are the expected breeding ground for endless amounts of backtracking, Zelda games are the unregulated, shady black market. You might think that's an odd thing to say, considering the franchise has always attempted to push a sense of adventure to the front, and non-linearity would always be celebrated because of this fact, but not many Zelda games are inherently non-linear. In fact, if you were to take the dungeons for what they are, with only perhaps a few instances per dungeon where you'd need to turn around and explore previous areas, there's very little backtracking required in these games. For the most part, the main form of backtracking is to some kind of central hub location that you come back to on multiple occasions throughout your journey to plug some artifact in or say hi to the townspeople and all their problems. What if you did this, but also incorporated a dungeon that you'd have to backtrack to half a dozen times that's also a lengthy timed stealth level? I feel like I just got bingo. Phantom Hourglass is a decent game that suffers from a handful of small issues and a planet-sized problem in the shape of the Temple of the Ocean King. This is a great example of breaking established convention when the established convention works quite well and is being replaced by an alternative that doesn't work very well. Usually you do some exploring of a Zelda dungeon, pick up your special item and use that item to defeat the boss. We've been doing this for decades now, everybody knows this. Some people are kind of bored of this. The Temple of the Ocean King is littered with phantoms that will chase Link down and take away from the time limit if they hit him, which would be mildly annoying and maybe a little interesting if this was a one-time deal, but no! In order to get everything done in this place, you're gonna come back here 5 or 6 times with only some of it changing some of the time. Don't that just sound like fun? Don't that sound exactly like what you want to be spending your time on? Of course it does! Zelda dungeons get their business done by posing as a reliable challenge where you do a certain number of things and then leave them alone. Unless you're playing Skyward Sword and need some special water, at which point you go all the way through a dungeon again to find the fucking special— I hate this! But the Temple of the Ocean King is very, very different. It's like the anti-Zelda temple with huge stretches of repetition sandwiched between disruptive gameplay mechanics and an overwhelming sense of inevitability that you're going to be seeing a lot more of this place than you'd like. At least when you're done with something like the water temple, you never have to go back to it ever again. You know you're in trouble when the water temple looks like a more favourable option. This is RabbidLuigi, and the biggest problem with the Temple of the Ocean King is how it dominates my memories of Phantom Hourglass. You go to and from this place so many different times that it quickly becomes a very large part of this game, and not in a good way. You know, the DS Zelda games are already underappreciated, and this does not help whatsoever. You're trying to tell everybody how great these games are, and the Temple of the Ocean King is like, yeah, I'm a fucking arsehole, what about it? Negativity bias will ruin everything you love. Have you got a topic that you'd like me to talk about next week? Make sure you leave a comment about that down below, because I'll be taking the most interesting suggestions and making a poll on the next video. In fact, here's one right now that I prepared from last week. I'll be revealing the winner of the poll on Twitter and taking suggestions for games to talk about that are related to that topic. So feel free to follow me over there so we can keep in touch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.